Who is the top playmaker for the Saints in 2024? Does New Orleans' offense lack the necessary weapons? Ladies and gentlemen, today, whenever you're watching this, we'll be talking about the New Orleans Saints playmakers. Who offensively is their go-to guy? Who are the players that will change the tides of the season and the game on offense? The Chris Olaves, the Rashid Shaheeds, the Alvin Kamara. Now, I'm going to let Jacob Hester, T-Bob Abear on off the bench kind of be our backdrop here, and I'm going to react like only I can react. Ladies and gentlemen, take it away.
Bill Barnwell ranked all of the NFL teams' offensive playmakers. So think wide receiver, running back, tight end. And where did your New Orleans Saints check in? They checked in at 25.
Let's go to the article. All right, here it is. Bill Barnwell. So 32 are the Chargers. 5th last year, all the way to 32. That is a crazy drop. Crazy drop. The Patriots expected. The Broncos expected. The Giants expected. Panthers expected. Steelers. Steelers. That's quite the decline. That's quite the drop. But understandable with Deontay Johnson and him leaving. So I don't know if it's that far. George Pickens is still decent. Let's not get stuck on that. Commanders, yep, no doubt. And then the Saints at 25. Okay, let's see who's above us. So the Bills losing Stephon Diggs. They were already at 20. Now they're at 24. Okay, the Raiders 11 to 23. Tough. 22 for Indy. Arizona 21. Cleveland 20. Okay, where are the Falcons? Tampa at 13. Okay, understandable. Jets at 12 is kind of low. Bengals at 11. All right. So this right here is my biggest problem with this whole thing. And I keep having to do this. I keep having to make this argument. I keep having to say this over and over and over and over again. Last year, the Falcons are 10. Okay. This year, they're 10. What has Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Rondale Moore, what have they done? Kyle Pitts, what has this group done to be considered a top 10 group over the Cincinnati Bengals? Who would you rather have? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Zach Moss? Would you rather the group that Cincinnati has? Or would you rather take your chances with Rondale Moore and Darnell Mooney and Drake London and Kyle Pitts? Bijan is good. Bijan is good. How much better is Bijan than Zach Moss? I think you might be surprised. So let's take a look, because this is my biggest gripe with this whole thing. Is that they have the Falcons at 10, okay? And remember, this is their whole kit and caboodle. It's not just Bijan Robinson. It's not just Drake London. It's everybody, okay? So let's just look around. Let's really look around. Let's just do some comparisons. So here's some running backs, all right? James Cook, Rachaad White, Zach Moss, Bijan Robinson. Zach Moss is in there because of the Bengals we just talked about. Rachaad White because of the division with Bijan. James Cook because the Bills were 20th, whatever they were. And just to show you kind of what Bijan, what his production level was at. Zach Moss, okay? He had 183 attempts, 794 yards, 4.3 yards a carry. You can see Bijan's. I've already done the math for you. If you give him the carries that equal 214 and you multiply that by his yards per attempt, you get 927 yards. All right? 927. So if you want to give him the carries, because he doesn't have the workload that the rest of the guys do. He only played 14 games. Obviously, he's not a bell cow back, but he would be right there with Bijan rushing yards wise, which is less than Rachaad White, which is less than James Cook, much less than James Cook. All right. Then you go to touchdowns. They're all right there. Rachaad White with the most. Zach Moss somehow had more rushing touchdowns than Bijan last year. You go to receptions. Bijan had second most. Rachaad White had the most receptions and the most receiving yards. Average, though, went to James Cook. Rachaad White still had a higher average than Bijan. Receiving touchdowns, Bijan tied for the most with James Cook. Somehow, Zach Moss had 2, and Bijan had 4. Let's keep going. Let's compare Drake London and Chris Olave. Okay, I don't have to go into this too much. Chris Olave has been the much better player in the first 2 years of their career, even though with 2 less games than Drake London, but he's been the far and away better player. Okay, let's take a look. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, or the entire suite of Drake London, Rondale Moore, and Darnell Mooney. If you combine Drake London, Rondale Moore, and Darnell Mooney, these 3 do not equal the production of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Let's go to the tight end. All we hear about is how sweet Kyle Pitts is, right? I just picked 3 random, average, absolute average, young tight ends in the NFL. All of them were better than Kyle Pitts. All of them. Kyle Pitts had the least amount of receptions. He had least amount of yards. He had the least amount of touchdowns besides Dalton Kincaid, who only had 2. Way worse than Jake Ferguson. Way worse than Cole Kmet. And Kyle Pitts this will be his 4th year. Okay? Dalton Kincaid's a rookie. Right? Like, ladies and gentlemen, when you're taking a look at this top 10 offense of the Atlanta Falcons, it's a total joke. There is no way you can put the Atlanta Falcons over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We just showed you. Rachaad White is, let's just say, equal to Bijan. You could argue both sides, but let's just say he's equal to Bijan. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are absolutely embarrassing Rondale Moore, Drake London, and Darnell Mooney. Baker and Kirk are equal-ish. Baker won the division last year. Had a good year. And you could argue Kyle Pitts is just a bang average tight end. So Cade Otton or who the hell ever, even if Kyle Pitts is a little bit better than Cade Otton, he's average. Guys, like, this whole Atlanta Falcons top 10 on straight up potential is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And let me just make sure here. This isn't even factoring in the quarterbacks. This is wide receiver, tight end, and running back talent. Okay? So this isn't even factoring in Baker and Kirk Cousins. This is telling you, and we can just focus on the Bucs, because we could do all these teams. Like I said, we could do the Bengals with Zach Moss, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. We could do all these guys. All right? Mike Gesicki has only been able to muster 606 receiving yards over the last 2 seasons. I guess he's hurt. I don't know. I know he can definitely do some dancing. But like, when you look at this, it's just crazy how far the Falcons are getting on potential. It's crazy how far people are willing to give the Falcons on potential. Will they be good? Maybe. But you don't put a team that might be good. You don't put a playmaker group that might be good. You don't put them at 10. One step ahead of them is Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp set the single-season record for receiving yards. Puka Nacua set the single-season record for rookie receiving yards. Kyren Williams had we could do, let's toss Kyren Williams in there. It's blowing my mind. I mean, how much is Arthur Blank paying ESPN? You throw in Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is the best running back out of this whole group. And he returns kicks and punts. Kyren Williams had, pretty damn good. Kyren Williams, 5 yards a carry. More carries, more yards, better average. 3 times the touchdowns as Bijan. Oh, hey, by the way, Atlanta probably had the best offensive line in the NFL last year. Well, Arthur Smith didn't know how to use him. He gave the ball 214 times. Okay, 214 times compared to Kyron's 228, compared to all these guys. About the same amount of usage, somewhere in there. Hey, look at this. So you're telling me that one spot below the Falcons, one spot below Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts is Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, I know this is a Saints video, but this glazing of the Falcons is out of control. All right, by the way, the Niners are 1, Eagles are 2, Dolphins are 3, Texans are 4, Vikings are 5. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I guess that's about right. I don't know if they should be 5. They're really giving Justin Jefferson a whole bunch. Let's go to the Saints. I mean, the Saints are probably about where they should be. I mean, the Saints have one great receiver in Chris Olave. A lot of unknown with Rashid Shaheed and whoever the 3 is going to be. Tight ends were terrible last year. Juwan Johnson had like 300 yards. He was hurt the whole time. Taysom, how do you even quantify him? Kamara's had like 3 straight down years in a row. I'm optimistic on him, but, you know, yeah, Kamara hasn't been an efficient runner for 3 seasons now, averaged 3.9 yards per carry. Yeah, I mean, I see it. So I can understand like why the Saints are ranked 25. If you're from the outside looking in. And we were 14 last year. Like we were up a lot. Up 14. We were 14 and we dropped 7 spots. That's about right. Because we didn't perform like the 14th best playmaker group, right? Juwan Johnson didn't play well. Thomas didn't play well. I mean, he played well when he was available, but then he's not there anymore. So I understand the drop. I understand the drop from 14 to 25. We were 21 in 2022, 14 last year, and then 25 now. So I get that. Totally get it. I do not get this. I do not understand 10 last year, 10 this year. Doesn't make sense. And this is your answer. This is your answer for why the Falcons keep getting predicted to win the South. If I was the Buccaneers, I'd be absolutely furious. Absolutely furious. I would not be happy at all. I mean, these comparisons are not even close. Not even close. Bijan is closer to Zach Moss than he is to Kyron Williams or James Cook or Rachaad White. Drake London isn't anywhere near Chris Olave. Rondale Moore and Darnell Mooney, LOL, are you kidding me? They had 352 yards and 414 yards. They had 2 touchdowns between them. This entire group of clowns had 4 touchdowns. All 3 of them had 4 receiving touchdowns. Together, they had, 1,700 yards? Together, they had 1,700 yards and 4 touchdowns. So Rondale Moore, Drake London, and Darnell Mooney equal 1 Tyreek Hill. Then you combine that with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who have combined 2,200 yards, 15 touchdowns. Oh, and then Kyle Pitts is worse than Cole Kmet and Jake Ferguson, and on par with Dalton Kincaid, a rookie.
We touched on this first hour, but I want to expound on it here because after I read this, I'm like, okay, let's think about this.
Wasn't on.
What let's just kind of do like a thought exercise here. Think about who the Saints currently have.
Yes.
And then think about whether or not you feel really threatened by that person. Like, does anybody feel dangerous? And then think back to the Saints golden era. You know, the Breeze Payton highs when they were at their best. Jimmy Graham felt terrifying.
Yeah.
For opponents. He was overwhelming. He was rim rattling, bringing down goalposts. Reggie Bush felt like a lightning bolt.
I mean, like, this is just nostalgia to the maximum. They felt dangerous because of Drew Brees. All right. Reggie Bush, what he did statistically in New Orleans, he was wasted in New Orleans. New Orleans treated, this is a ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the hottest takes you'll ever hear. I'm about to say it. Get yourself ready. New Orleans treated Reggie Bush how the Falcons treated Bijan Robinson last year. Arthur Smith got fired because of his misusage of Bijan Robinson. And now T-Bob, through rose-colored glasses, is glazing Sean Payton for his usage of Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush was misused in New Orleans and was wasted in New Orleans.
Shred you at any time. Always, like when he had the ball in him, he felt sharp. There was an edge to him. Alvin Kamara early on, same deal. Dangerous all over the place. How do you cover him? How do you account for him? He's a harbinger for the new age of running backs. Mike Thomas. It's funny, Mike Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Thomas, but it's also funny. It's like two of the players that T-Bob has named, Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, were on the team last year. The big difference is that Drew Brees is running that offense. The big difference is Sean Payton is orchestrating the offense. The big difference is that was when this offense was fresh. That was when this offense was cutting edge. You know, Kamara is older. Kamara has been bad. The team has been bad. The offense has been bad. The system has been bad.
Thomas, a bit less edge, a bit more like a blunt force tool, but still very effective. Like, wasn't there some old, I think back in medieval times, there was some
like
old
the restaurant?
rule. No, but hey, don't get me started on medieval times. You don't want to derail this segment that easily.
Down. Rednecks going down.
I will never go to medieval times and not do a cable guy chant. It is a 1,000% guarantee. If you see me in there, I will be doing the down chant.
Yes.
I've never heard of medieval times.
1,000% of the time. But the point, like, I think like back in medieval times, there was like some weird religious rule where it's like, oh, if you're a priest, you can't use an edged weapon. You have to use like a hammer or like a mace. That was Mike Thomas. Still very dangerous though, right? But just gonna bludgeon you to death
with
gangs 1,000
in New York?
hits to the head.
Really?
Just bah, bah, bah. Do you have anybody like that now?
This, again, I don't have a problem putting us at 25 because we are weak at playmaker. Chris Olave is really good. We saw that. We looked at that. Chris Olave is awesome. But Chris Olave is not Justin Jefferson. Chris Olave is not top tier, the most elite of the elite wide receivers. He's in that second or third tier. He's somewhere in that 15 to 20th best receiver. That doesn't get you very far in these kind of rankings. It doesn't get you very far when your best option is the 17th best receiver and the rest of the group is just relative no names. And then you have Alvin Kamara, who's on a 3-year stretch of being really, really poor. So I don't blame the ranking for the Saints. The Saints definitely need to add weapons. I personally think Kamara is going to have kind of a renaissance, no pun intended. Medieval times, Renaissance fair, ladies and gentlemen, nobody does it like I do it. I think Alvin Kamara is going to have a bit of a renaissance this year, but I may be a little optimistic on that. If you are looking from the outside in, if you're Bill Barnwell, I don't blame you for not believing in Alvin Kamara.
Who feels dangerous? Do you have a weapon that strikes fear into the heart of your enemies? And you have some okay guy, you got good guy. Yeah. I don't know that you have any. And maybe that's a function of, like we talked about, Pete Carmichael, the offensive philosophy, Derek Carr.
Yeah, maybe.
There just doesn't seem to be anybody that's fear striking anymore, though.
Yeah.
No, we went through the list earlier in the show. I think there's good players. There's no doubt there's good players. Chris Olave, I think, is a really good NFL player, but does he strike that fear?
Well, it's kind of the same as Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore, where like Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore, Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry, Cedric Wilson, Equanimeous St. Brown, you can just all throw them in a hat and just draw names, and like they're all the same. They're the same. Like at a certain level, when you get to that group of players, you're dealing with, like, if we're talking in Madden terms, you're dealing with a bunch of like 74 overalls. And it's like, I mean, 74 is a 74. What's the difference between a 71 and a 74? Not much, right? So we don't have that guy. Like Chris Olave is probably like an 85, 84. He's not a 90. He's not a 91. He's not a 95. He's not a 99. So yeah, it's a relative list of no names. Now, what I'm shocked about is that the Falcons still get this like, yeah, those guys are relative no names, and they also have been completely below average. But we think they're going to be great. Why? I don't know. Kirk Cousins is sweet or something. And then you look over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they're like, "Hey, we actually were sweet last year. Mike Evans actually did have a good season last year. Chris Godwin had over 1,000 yards. Baker Mayfield was good last year. Rashad White was good last year. And they're like, yeah, but not sexy enough. We're going to give you all 13. Like, that's my big argument here, is that the Falcons just keep getting glazed off potential and no performances.
If you're corner one on the team that's facing the Saints, are you like, oh man, we got Chris Olave this week?
Yeah, I don't think so, which is crazy because the numbers are good, but it doesn't feel like people feel that way.
Chris Olave reminds me a lot of Randall Cobb, where Randall Cobb was a good receiver. Randall Cobb had good numbers. Randall Cobb was incredibly efficient. Randall Cobb was very good. But Randall Cobb was not a guy who you would look at and be like, man, who the hell's going to cover him? You know, he did his job, got his numbers, did what he had to do. Good player, great career, or great stretch there. But yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think Olave is the guy where, you know, like Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, those are guys where it's like, how the hell are we going to contain these guys? Like, who's going to cover them? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Chris Olave, I don't think is that yet.
I wonder, you mentioned Rashid Shaheed earlier. I wonder if, because of his speed, like how close he is to that. Because if I'm corner two, and I know I'm going against Rashid Shaheed, and he can pick him up and put him down,
better be ready.
I got to make sure that I am ready.
He needs more volume.
So real quick, let's rank the Saints' weapons in and look at who's maybe the key to changing this narrative would be.
All right, Olave is 1. I would still say Kamara's 2. You almost had to put Kamara at 2 because of the volume. Again, he's going to touch the ball more than anyone else on the team. So he better be your second best playmaker. Really, he should be your first best playmaker. Then Shaheed is probably 3 just because of the speed. But again, is he going to get the volume? After that, it's probably Taysom just because of the Swiss Army knife situation. But, you know, Taysom might actually be a little higher. And then beyond that, it's really nothing.
We would obviously have Olave as weapon 1, right?
Yeah.
Is Taysom Hill or Rashid Shaheed weapon 2?
Taysom Hill can be weapon 2 if, in this San Francisco 49ers offense they're bringing to New Orleans, I think utilizes him like I think they can.
Yeah, I agree with that. Taysom could be 2. Taysom could be 1. But again, how much volume is that going to be? If they really lean on Taysom in that role, and Taysom is Kyle Juszczyk mixed with George Kittle, and he's all over the place, and he's touching the ball a lot, and we're getting to see him, yeah, cool. If he's doing a quarterback power 5 times a game, not so much.
Like they have in the past with multiple players with the ball, without the ball, I think he can be that. Are they going to give themselves over to that, though, is going to be the question.
Yeah, and it's tough. How many touches do you give Taysom Hill, right? Like,
exactly.
If he is who we think he can be, and he's going in the right direction with you struggling to run the football out of just your base formations, and they have over the last 4 years, then you give him 10 touches a game.
Yeah, how those touches come, though. And this is what I was talking about last year, too, where it's like, okay, let's say you do give Taysom 10 touches a game. Let's say it's 8 carries, 2 receptions. Well, you probably don't want to force a Jamal Williams 6 carries in there. Because all of a sudden now, if you give Kamara 15 carries, you give Taysom 8 carries, you give Jamal Williams 6 carries, you give a couple of jet sweeps here and there, all of a sudden you're running the ball like 35 times. What's going on here? You don't want to back yourself into that corner, which is last year whenever we would see Jamal Williams run the ball 8, 9, 10 times for 10 yards a game. Very problematic. So I hope Taysom is used creatively. I don't know if he can be used creatively and with enough volume to truly be a top playmaker.
Because I think he warrants that if you're still struggling to run the football.
I mean, let's say he had 400 yards rushing and 400 yards receiving, which would be pretty crazy. But if he had 400 and 400, is that enough to be like, that's our number 1 playmaker? That's our number 2 playmaker. It's like he had 400 yards rushing and 400 receiving. Like that's your number 2 playmaker?
A lot of people in chat point out Darren Sproles. Absolutely. That was also someone who in a Saints uniform just felt dangerous.
But again, it's like that's the same. It's like talking about the Patriots. It's like being like Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, Deion Branch, Randy Moss. Like, yeah, they all felt dangerous. They were on one of the best teams ever. They were on one of the best offenses ever. Tom Brady was throwing like Rob Gronkowski, yeah, sure. But it's different. Like Drew Brees makes a big difference there. Isaiah Pacheco isn't Isaiah Pacheco without Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce isn't Travis Kelce without Patrick Mahomes. Like there's a lot, there's a lot going on. So it's to look back at the old Saints days and be like, oh man, we had Darren Sproles and Pierre Thomas and this player and that player and this Mark Ingram. Remember how good he was? Oh man, Lance Moore. Remember how good he was? Oh man, Devery Henry. Oh wow, we're not gonna be able to compare that because you're talking about one of the greatest offenses ever for over a decade. All the players are going to shine pretty bright in that offense.
Felt terrified.
He felt dangerous in a Kansas State uniform, a Chargers uniform, a Saints uniform, an Eagles uniform.
Sproles did end up. I mean, Sproles was dangerous. Sproles was just really good. I mean, he's right about that. He was just as dangerous for Philly as he was for New Orleans.
I mean, that getting rid of Sproles in pursuit of what's his name? Who's the old safety? Jairus Byrd.
He was
the biggest disaster in the Peyton Brees Saints.
I didn't play against Byrd when he was with the Saints. I did when he was in Buffalo, and his pass rush move was like, I'm like,
you slow. So I would say Olave, Hill, Shaheed, then Kamara. Then probably Juwan Johnson, whatever.
See, I just don't think you can put Kamara that low.
And ranking them, I think, makes you feel really how bland this kind of group is.
Yeah,
but if they're going to change it,
it's got to be Kamara.
I think Shaheed is key number one.
No, key number one is Alvin, because if Alvin gets back to where he was, if Alvin gets back to being a legitimate top 5, top 6 dual threat running back in this offense, which begs for a dual threat running back, if Alvin can turn back the clock, all of a sudden he's your number one playmaker. Chris Olave is number 2, and you're looking around like, okay, we're all right. Okay, we're all right. All right now. So it's up to Kamara to really change this. I just don't think Rashid Shaheed can do enough to change the narrative of this. Rashid Shaheed can have a great year, but he can't do enough to change the overall narrative of the Saints playmakers like an Alvin Kamara can. If Alvin Kamara, and that's because of the volume, he's going to have the ball so much. So if Alvin Kamara, does something we've never seen before, has over 1,000 yards rushing and gets back to his receiving ways, and you tack on a bunch of touchdowns, and all of a sudden that narrative changes, because now it's like, damn, we have one of the best all-purpose running backs there are. So he is the guy who could change the narrative.
And he'd be an every down wide receiver too, like they're trying to make him, because he has the most threatening physical trait in just the raw speed that he has. That's why he was.
I mean, another part of this answer is T-Bob saying Rashid Shaheed. Well, if Rashid Shaheed does enough this year to become your number one playmaker, he might just be your number one wide receiver. So that's how much he's going to have to do. Rashid Shaheed is going to have to be so impactful that there's an argument that he is the number one wide receiver. Do you believe Rashid Shaheed can have that good of a year to where he would be thought of as the number one guy? I don't. Nothing against Rashid Shaheed, but I just don't think that's such a big jump. You're talking about adding 700 yards to his total. You're talking about adding just so many targets. He has the skill set to do it. He could do it. I just don't know if he's going to do it all in 1 year. In 2 years' time, maybe he is on par with Olave. But to say, by the end of this year, Rashid Shaheed will be the number one wide receiver on this team, pushing Olave to second, be kind of shocking.
He was an all-pro returner last year. And then obviously,
it was good for us.
Actually, maybe this is actually key number one, but Alvin Kamara just getting back on track. Can he have a CMC-esque? Can you get a 75% of what Christian McCaffrey did in terms of bringing back his career? Can you get 75% of that for Alvin Kamara? If you do, I think you are a markedly better offense as well.
100%.
Probably that.
Finally. See, T-Bob had to kind of work his way around. Then finally he got to where I was.
Can AK get back to being in that top 10, maybe bottom of the top 10, kind of 10 to 15 range of running backs in the NFL?
Yeah, it's going to be a big question. And as we know, that position, you get older, you don't typically get better. You only get worse.
Yeah.
Now,
unless you're Raheem Mostert.
he's not taking maybe some of the hits that other running backs have taken, but over the last couple of years, it's been very tough. And
It's been bad.
I can't really even blame Alvin Kamara. There's not, like, if I watch tape of the Saints offensive line in the run game.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line's been horrible. The offensive scheme and strategy has been horrible and stagnant. So, yeah, I don't blame Alvin, but it is what it is.
Like, where are you supposed to go?
Yeah.
And also, they didn't play to the skill of their running back. Remember,
Yeah,
I mean, they're running
exactly. They just ran him up the middle.
like straight inside zone and never getting him on the edges and no stretch leads, no outside
screens,
zone,
no nothing.
Not a lot of tosses. Like there wasn't a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
And if you've got a bruising, if you've got a Derrick Henry and you want to run power, maybe some counter inside zone, okay, all right, I can get behind that. He's not going to get to the edge. He's fast.
Yeah, but if you have Alvin Kamara and a horrific offensive line, why are you doing that?
But he's not going to get to the edge. If he does, it's because he stiff-armed 3 people. But for Alvin Kamara, like you would think outside zone and stretch lead and those type of things would be where he would thrive.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
You didn't see any of that.
Yeah.
No.
So, like for philosophy and because of poor run blocking in front of him, I think that it's not the only reason, but it's a large portion of it.
Yeah, no doubt.
So again, this is your daily Saints segment where basically we talk about how things aren't that good, but maybe like Clint Kubiak can just make it all work. I mean, I have never had an offseason where there's been so much hope tied into just one coaching change, and not even a head coaching change.
Yeah.
Just a coordinator change. Well, we'll see. But yeah, the Saints' weapons definitely leaving a bit to be desired. Wow,
agreed. There you go. Good video. Good discussion. Good topic. I mean, let me know in the comments below what you think. I mean, am I too low on Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore, and Drake London, and Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts? Because we just saw the numbers. I'm not impressed. Do they have potential? Yeah, sure, maybe. Can Kirk Cousins fix a lot of it? Yeah, sure, maybe. But you don't put yes, sure, maybe at 10th overall. If you want to yes, sure, maybe them at 15 and have the Buccaneers at 13 or 12 or whatever, okay, fine. But I'm just sick and tired of this glaze festival with the Atlanta Falcons. There's no way you can have them above the Buccaneers. Rachaad White, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin were better than just those 3 guys were better than Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Rondale Moore, Darnell Mooney, Bijan Robinson all combined. So all 5 guys versus the Bucs 3, the Bucs 3 is better or was better last year. So how the hell can you put them at 13 and then the Falcons at 10? Ladies and gentlemen, get on down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.